In the penthouse of this luxury hotel, a Saudi prince is preparing to visit a powerful relative. It's a meeting that will change his life forever. Sultan bin Turki bin Abdulaziz has been publicly criticizing the Saudi royal family. Now he's been invited for a conversation. Early in the morning, Prince Sultan is driven to a palace on the outskirts of Geneva. It belongs to his uncle, King Fahd of Saudi Arabia. This man, Prince Abdulaziz bin Fahd, is the king's favorite son. He has invited his cousin Sultan to breakfast. They're joined by the Saudi Minister of Islamic Affairs, Sheikh Saleh al-Sheikh. Abdulaziz asks Sultan to return to Saudi Arabia. He says he'll be protected and that everything will be resolved. Sultan refuses. Abdulaziz excuses himself to make a phone call. Then al-Sheikh also leaves the room. Sultan is left alone. Suddenly, masked men rush in. They beat Sultan and handcuff him. One plunges a needle into his neck. Unconscious, Sultan is rushed to Geneva airport where a plane is waiting. Several days later, he awakes. He's in a hospital in Riyadh. For the last year, BBC Arabic has been investigating the disappearance of 3 Saudi princes. All were living in Europe and all have vanished. There is strong evidence that they were abducted. This is King Fahd's palace outside Geneva, where Prince Sultan was allegedly abducted. What really happened that morning in 2003? And what could Prince Sultan have done that would lead his own family to violently drug and kidnap him? If Sultan was really kidnapped by the Saudis, could that give us a clue to the fate of the other missing princes? I need to know what Sultan had been doing in the months leading up to his disappearance. My journey begins in the English seaside town of Bournemouth. I've come to meet Eddie Ferreira. In 2003, he was Sultan's communications officer.
I think they were just very unhappy that really he was opening the lid up effectively on the regime.
In 2002, Sultan came to Europe for medical treatment. He also began giving interviews critical of the Saudi government.
أهم شيء الإصلاح وأهم شيء محاسبة المجرمين ويجب على الدولة السعودية أن تنبذ الإرهاب وحتى لو كان صادر من بعض من أجزاء من الحكومة فيها.
Sultan's comments were not welcomed in Riyadh.
I would make and receive calls for the prince, and certainly in so doing I definitely picked up on the fact that there were members of the regime, the royal family, who were very, very anti and very much against what he was doing.
Sultan said the Saudis had frozen his money and assets, so he couldn't pay his hotel bill or his staff. Then came the meeting on the 12th of June.
I think everybody was awake, certainly Prince Sultan was as well. And the tension started to ramp up. You could feel it in the air. It felt very much like it was going to be a make or break situation.
Eddie had no idea this would be the last time he'd see Sultan, who was about to be abducted and flown back to Riyadh. 7 months later, in January 2004, the prince resurfaced. In a call to an Arabic news channel, he said he was under house arrest. He described his experiences and named those he held responsible.
أعتبر كل من الأمير عبد العزيز بن فهد بن عبد العزيز وزير الدولة ورئيس ديوان رئاسة مجلس الوزراء والشيخ صالح بن عبد العزيز آل الشيخ وزير الشؤون الإسلامية والأوقاف والدعوة والإرشاد بالمملكة العربية السعودية مسؤولين مباشرين عن خطفي وأطالب بمحاكمتهم علنا على تنفيذ هذه الجريمة الإرهابية.
Years later, Sultan approached Clyde Berg-Stresser, a lawyer in Boston, and told him his story.
It belies any credibility that this was anything other than the abduction described by Prince Sultan. I interviewed some witnesses, collected some medical evidence, including a medical record from King Faisal Hospital where he was admitted the next day on June 13th of 2003, which indicated he had aspirated and been intubated in Geneva and was put on a medevac plane that, for some reason, was already waiting at the airport.
Intubation is the insertion of a tube into someone's mouth and airway to help them breathe after being anesthetized. The hospital report says this had been done to Sultan, and also that one side of his diaphragm was paralyzed, presumably as a result of the assault. Meanwhile, Sultan's team were waiting at the hotel. As the hours passed, they became increasingly concerned.
Progressively, as the day went on, the silence became deafening. We couldn't reach the security team. That was the first real alert. We tried to contact them, couldn't get through, no response. We tried to contact the prince, no response, no answer.
Then, in the afternoon, two unexpected visitors arrived.
The Saudi ambassador to Switzerland came in with the general manager of the hotel and quite simply just told everybody to vacate the penthouse and get out. The prince was in Riyadh, our services were no longer required, and we could leave.
We asked to speak to Prince Abdulaziz bin Fahd and Sheikh Saleh Al Sheikh. Neither responded to our requests. Ever since 1932, when King Abdulaziz bin Saud created Saudi Arabia, the country has been ruled as an absolute monarchy. It does not tolerate dissent, and its conservatism has driven some members of the royal family to live overseas. I'm meeting Prince Khalid bin Farhan Al Saud. His branch of the family fell out of favor long ago, and more recently, he began to question the Saudi regime as a whole. Eventually, he fled to Germany, where he claimed political asylum.
يعني التعامل مع المعارضين من داخل الأسرة الحاكمة داخل السعودية أول شيء منع من السفر، يمنعوك من السفر، يضايقوا عليك ماديا. لو حسوا انك تتكلم او في خطر زيادة اقامة جبرية، وهذا يعتمد كمان يعني دخل هل لك ظهر ولا لا، يعني لك فلين السجن برضه.
According to Prince Khalid, the fate of the dissident princes is decided at the very top of the Saudi government.
المعارضة الخارجية لأنه ممكن هذه أشياء دولية، يعني ممكن غلطة تصير تؤثر على العلاقات ما بين دول، فبطبيعة الحال هي بتكون من قرارات الملك، خاصة في الاختطاف أو القتل.
كيف لك بتلك المعلومات؟ من أين أتيت بتلك المعلومة؟
أنا من الأسرة، والأسرة حقتي هي الحكومة نفسها، فبطبيعة الحال أعرف يعني.
I wondered what it felt like for Khalid to be forced into exile and unable to travel freely.
يعني أكيد مشتاق إني أروح بلدي السعودية، بس أنا عارف أول ما أروح السعودية إيش راح يصير فيه. ما راح أشوف السعودية، راح أشوف غرفة ظلمة، سجن.
إيش تعتقدون يعني؟ بنسكت؟ بنجبن؟ بنطاطي رؤوس؟
This is Prince Turki bin Bandar Al Saud. Once he was a major in the Saudi police with the responsibility for policing the royal family itself. That gave him access to highly sensitive information. A bitter inheritance dispute with the family landed Turki in prison. On his release, he fled to Paris where he lived in this apartment. In June 2012, he began posting videos on YouTube in which he calls for reform in Saudi Arabia. Turki also claimed to have some very damaging documents. He threatened to expose corruption at the royal family's highest levels.
وتصير بدل ما تكون وزير تمنع الجريمة تصير أنت رأس الجريمة.
I've spent months tracking down people in Paris who knew Turki. Most are reluctant to speak, saying they fear retribution from the Saudi government. But I have finally had a break. This is Wael Al-Khalaf. He's a blogger and activist who was a friend of Turki's. You watched Turki bin Bandar's videos. Did you discuss them with him?
طبعا أنا كمهتم في حقوق الإنسان وفيما يحدث في داخل المجتمع السعودي من ظلم واختفاء قسري لبعض الأشخاص وقمع للحريات، فكنا نتحدث كثيرا عن هذا الموضوع ونتبادل الآراء.
The Saudis reacted as they had with Prince Sultan and tried to persuade Turki to return. When the Deputy Minister of the Interior called, the Prince recorded the conversation and posted it online.
بس طال عمرك هين اقول كل اللي يستبشر بعودتك الله يسلمك.
لا ايه يستبشر بعودتي عشان الخطابات اللي يرسلونها لي ضباطكم يا الله يكرمك يا ولد القح يا سربوت من جرك زي سلطان بن تركي بن
هذا لا يمثل وانا اخوك.
لا من عندكم
امانك واهلك ابدا.
لا من عندكم من الداخليه ترسل ترى على فكره.
The leak embarrassed the Saudis. They turned up the pressure, but Turki still refused to return. Was he threatened?
حسب ما ذكر لي بشكل مستمر. يعني في ناس كان يتصلون معه لمحاولة إقناعه العودة للسعودية للنقاش للتفاوض، أي نقاش تفاوض يعني. وفي ناس لا كانت تجي تهديدات من أرقام مجهولة، وهو كان عارف إنه يبغونه يعني يبغونه بشتى الوسائل يعني. خلاص بنجيب راسك ما نخليك.
Turki went on publishing videos until July 2015. Then, sometime later that year, he disappeared.
وكان يعني يكلمني كل شهر كل شهرين حسب. فاختفى فترة 4-5 شهور، فشكيت في الموضوع أنا. فجتني معلومات من داخل المملكة من أحد الضباط الكبار أنه تركي من بندر باستضافتنا صار عندنا يعني جابوه خطفوه يعني.
Although Wael believed Turki had been kidnapped, I needed to find out more. So I asked Prince Khalid, who's still well connected in Saudi Arabia.
الأمير تركي بن بندر هو عنده أتوقع مشروع أو شيء في المغرب، أخويته أو حولة يعني أن المغرب لا ما يعني بلد أمان ما فيها يعني ما تبيعه أو، لكن للأسف سمع كلامهم وركب طيارة وراح حتى سلم من المطار يعني ما حتى ما طلع برا.
I searched the international media for news of Turkey. Finally, I found this article in a Moroccan newspaper. It says Turkey was about to leave Morocco for France when he was arrested and jailed. Then, following a request from the Saudi authorities, he was deported with the approval of a Moroccan court. If the article is accurate, it looks as if the Moroccan authorities may have colluded with the Saudis in Turkey's deportation. We put these allegations to the government of Morocco, but they declined to comment. We don't know for certain what's happened to Turki bin Bandar, but before he disappeared, he gave his friend Wael a copy of a book he'd written. He'd added a note that reads like a prophecy.
طبعا هو كتب لي في كتابه في خط يده، كاتب لي عزيزي وائل، هذه الكتابات يمنع نشرها إلا في حال اختفائي أو اغتيالي، لأنني أعلم حق اليقين بأنهم سيخطفوني أو سيغتالوني، وأنا أعلم مدى إجرامهم بحقي وبحق الشعب السعودي.
What do you believe happened to him?
أنا أتوقع كرأيي الشخصي تمت تصفيته.
كلها نفس الطريقة؟
There is no proof that Turki has been executed. More likely he's been imprisoned. but he's lower in the royal pecking order than Sultan, so he's more vulnerable. After his return to Riyadh, Sultan was moved between house arrest and high security prison. His health deteriorated badly. Fearing the possible consequences of his death, the family eventually allowed him to seek medical treatment in Boston. What he did next must have horrified the Saudis.
He confided in me the details of the abduction that he described that had occurred in June of 2003 in Geneva, the details of which formed the basis of eventually a criminal complaint.
In November 2014, Sultan accused Prince Abdulaziz bin Fahd and Sheikh Saleh al-Sheikh of being responsible for his kidnap. In Geneva, 7 months later, Sultan gave further testimony to a Swiss prosecuting attorney. Clyde Bergstresser was present. He says that Swiss authorities have shown little interest in the case.
Nothing has been done to pursue what occurred at that airport. Who were the pilots? What were the flight plans? When these planes from Saudi Arabia arrived? This abduction occurred on Swiss soil, and one would think that there would be an interest in finding out how that occurred.
For the first time, a senior Saudi royal was launching a criminal complaint in a Western court against another family member. The pressure on the monarchy was mounting. I'd heard about yet another Saudi prince who'd disappeared. Saud bin Saif al-Nasr was a relatively minor royal, a playboy with a liking for Europe's casinos and expensive hotels. But in 2014, Saud began tweeting attacks on the Saudi monarchy.
To those who say I'm criticizing people from my family, I say it's obligatory to state the truth.
In September 2015, an anonymous Saudi prince wrote 2 letters calling for a coup to remove King Salman. The letters went online and were read by millions. This was an astonishing display of opposition. Prince Saud was the only royal to endorse the letters. This was tantamount to treason and may have sealed his fate. A few days later, his Twitter account fell silent. This tweet on the 10th of September was his last.
I call for the nation to turn the content of the letters into popular pressure.
I've made contact with the man who was in touch with Saud in the days before his disappearance. He fears reprisals, so an actor speaks his words.
منذ أول نشاطه كان يشعر أنه بخطر، وكان يحدث الذين حوله عن أنه إما سيغتال في إيطاليا أو سيخطف.
Despite Saud's precautions, Prince Khaled believes he may have fallen into an elaborate trap.
كلمته شركة روسية إيطالية على أساس أنها تبغى تفتح تجارة في بدول الخليج وخاصة في السعودية. وكلموه على أساس أنهم محتاجين اسم بسمع، يعني اسم من داخل الأسرة الحاكمة. وبيعطوا له نسبة معينة، مدري 2% أو 3%.
قلت له ما المطلوب منك؟ قال المطلوب مني أن أركب طائرة خاصة وأقابل رئيس هذا المشروع حتى نتفاهم على التفاصيل، وكان متحمسا يريد أن ينفذ هذا الاقتراح.
وبطبيعة الحال كانت المخابرات السعودية مفبركة العملية هذه كلها، وبالفعل جاءت الطائرة الخاصة اللي تابعة للشركة أخذت الأمير سعود بن سيف النصر، ولكن ما هبطت في روما، هبطت في الرياض.
Khaled fears that if Saud is in Riyadh, his life there will not be pleasant.
الأمير سعود بن سيف النصر أكيد مصيره نفس مصير تركي، يعني أكيد مصيره السجن، يعني ما في نقاش وين مصير غير هذا. يعني مصيرهم في سجن محدد تحت الأرض، الله يعينهم، يعني هذا اللي راح أقوله بس.
We can't be sure what happened to Prince Saud, but we do know about Prince Sultan. In January 2016, he was staying in this exclusive Paris hotel. He was about to visit his father in Cairo. He was traveling with an entourage of about 18, including his personal doctor and nurses and bodyguards from the US and Europe. Two of them tell us what happened. They fear reprisals, so we've hidden their identities and actors speak their words. The Saudi consulate had offered Sultan the use of a private jet. Despite everything that had previously happened, he accepted.
We pulled onto the tarmac, and in front of us was a huge airplane. It had the country of Saudi Arabia written on it.
It was a little eerie because there were a lot of crew members on board. All of them were male.
The plane took off with its in-flight monitors showing it was set for Cairo.
Prince Sultan said he was tired and that he wanted to go to sleep. So one of the security members helped him to his room and he went to lie down.
2.5 hours into the flight, all the monitors suddenly went blank.
He woke up about an hour before we landed and looked out of the window, and his entire demeanour changed. He grew anxious. It wasn't until just before we landed that we realised we were in Saudi Arabia. As soon as the prince realised where we were, he got up without his walker and was trying to get towards the door.
The prince lashed out at the gentleman in front of him.
Sultan was banging on the cockpit door and yelling for help. One crew member ordered the prince's team to stay in their seats. They were about to land in Riyadh.
We looked out the window and we just saw a bunch of people get out with their rifles slung over their chest and surrounded the plane.
The soldiers and cabin crew dragged Sultan from the plane. He was screaming at his team to call the US embassy.
It was a very chaotic, frightening atmosphere because none of us really knew what was going on.
The prince and his medical team were taken to a villa and put under armed guard. On the plane, the others waited nervously.
Then they came on with people in uniforms, with weapons. They told everyone, grab all your stuff and get off the plane. They took us to a hotel. Everyone got a room. And they just said, we'll talk to you soon.
After 3 days in captivity, Sultan's team were given back their passports and phones and allowed to fly to destinations of their choice.
I sat down in front of the Saudi official. I actually recognized him as he was one of the quote-unquote flight attendants on the plane.
He told us that we were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time and that he was sorry for the inconvenience.
I wasn't inconvenienced. I was kidnapped. I was held against my will in a country that I didn't choose to go to.
It was an astonishing situation. Together with Prince Sultan, around 18 foreign nationals had been kidnapped and taken to Saudi Arabia. They'd had their phones and passports confiscated and were held by the Saudi military. There has been no news of Prince Sultan since these events. His lawyer told the Swiss prosecutor what had happened. He hoped something might finally be done about Sultan's earlier complaint.
As far as I know, he's done nothing to seek to get access to Prince Sultan in Saudi Arabia or any of the people against whom Prince Sultan complained for the 2003 abduction.
Instead, the Swiss lawyer said he intended to suspend the prosecution because Prince Sultan was unavailable.
My understanding of Swiss law is you have 15 years to complete the prosecution, 15 years from that June date in 2003, and it's a lengthy process going through the entire prosecution. So effectively, by suspending the prosecution, it's really defeating the ability to, in a timely manner, pursue the prosecution.
In effect, the legal action against Sultan's alleged kidnappers will be allowed to expire. We asked the government of Saudi Arabia to respond to the allegations in this film. It declined to comment. Meanwhile, Prince Khalid, still exiled in Germany, fears he too may face the same fate as Sultan.
إن كنا يعني وصلنا لين 4 في أوروبا بينتقدوا من داخل الأسرة، بينتقدوا الحكم في السعودية. 3 منهم انخطفوا، فأنا الوحيد اللي باقي يعني الحمد لله.
هل أنت مقتنع بأنك القادم على قائمة الاختطافات؟
أنا مقتنع ومو من الحين، من زمان. لو كانوا يقدروا كانوا سووها، بس أنا حذر كثير يعني. ولكن هذا الشيء طبعا على حساب حريتي.